Welcome back everyone, once again for another SnowRunner truck review. Today we're going to take a look at the second vehicle added to the new Season 9 Ontario, Canada, which is a formidable yet impressive vehicle for a 4x4. So before we start, I ask that you please help support the channel by liking the video and subscribing to the channel as well. Alright, so without further ado, let's jump into this and check it out. Manufactured at the Minsk automobile plant, the MAZ 200 was the first Soviet truck powered by a diesel engine produced in the late 40s. The MAZ was outfitted with a V6 diesel engine in 1962. As all trucks do, the MAZ went through changes and upgraded versions and modifications. The version that most resembles the in-game representation would potentially be the MAZ 502. In the game of SnowRunner, the MAZ 502 joins the Zikz fleet as the Zikz 566 Alpha. The 566 Alpha sets itself apart from the normal off-road class 4x4s with some impressive add-on configurations and overall performance. As usual, the base stats will briefly be on your screen for viewing while we jump right into the downsides list at the number 1 spot, small tires. Later in this video, you'll understand why this downside doesn't necessarily inhibit performance too much, yet we have to keep the standard of the channel. A 47-inch tire, while being big for the truck's size, still is a rather small tire, and we also have to mention an even smaller mud tire option. Compared to the other 4x4s, its max tire size still rivals the others, but again, the mud tire downsize is disappointing. Downside number 2. Weight, wheel spin, and steering. Weighing the same as its brother, the Zikz 5368, and also as much as the Step 310 Echo, it is rather heavy for a 4x4, which I believe does help its cause. Yet with how much power the 566 Alpha can call upon, it's going to have wheel spin issues. Lastly, while it can definitely handle a slower turning speed, if you plan on trailblazing in the high-range gearbox, just be sure to start your turns a tad bit early. Downside number 3. Average saddle performance. Before you run to the comments and dispute this downside, just hear me out here. As a blanket statement, I'm just going to say that this is probably one of the best 4x4 low saddle trucks in the game for me personally. However, it wouldn't be my first pick to do a job of that sort, but actually it's pretty good at doing it for a 4x4. Still, sparingly I see the front of the truck pull off the ground and lose a little bit of steering input, but I believe it's much less than its peers. Downside number 4. Small fuel tank and consumption. This downside right here is rather simple. The Zikz seems like its fuel consumption with add-ons is very minimal and similar to the Step 3364 Crocodile, yet as soon as you apply a load or are actively using it as a prime mover, it will start to chug some fuel. And the sad thing is, it doesn't have much to call on. With a roof rack it can get some decent ranges, that is true, but I would keep an eye on this one and have some support for the 566 Alpha if you plan on pulling heavy loads. Downside number 5. Roof rack conflictions and winch locations. Making our downside number 5 very brief here, the Zikz has a conflict with the water tank add-on, which removes its roof rack, of which I believe is essential when using this vehicle. Yes, with just the water tank add-on alone, it's not going to burn a ton of fuel, but it's worth noting. And lastly, oddly, it doesn't have a centralized winch location on the frame, which is rather odd. Not too big of a deal here, but when you're trying to flip it over, you might have some frustrations. And finally, wrapping up our downsides list at the number 6 spot, durability and power loss. In just a few moments, we'll talk about this amazing power, but first, we need to mention durability and its power loss. Having a brand new exclusive engine does have its perks, right? But then again, as I often say, sometimes upgrades are trading something for the benefit of that looks appealing. In this case, the Zikz has a glass cannon of an engine, and I do need to mention that it loses a significant amount of power when it becomes damaged. So for those of you who like to roll fast down trails, stay safe out there. While those downsides didn't seem too bad, guys, let's move on to the good news. Here are the pros for the Zikz 566 Alpha. Coming in at upside number 1, power, all-wheel drive, and differential locking. It might seem rather redundant seeing our usual upside number 1 time and time again, but let me justify this one for today. The Zikz, just like the Dairy Special, gets its own exclusive engine. This gives it the same amount of torque as both Tega's, the Voron D, and the Voron AE. While not being as tanky as those former I just mentioned, it is complemented with an always-on all-wheel drive, switchable diff lock, and other advantageous upsides. Upside number 2, exclusive gearbox. While having 2 less gears than the regular high-range gearboxes, just like the Azov Sprinter, the 566 Alpha also has dedicated gearboxes that perform differently than the standard. For those who love the high-range gearbox, I believe it performs similar to the sport gearbox on the Azov Sprinter, but with higher allowances for power throughput in those higher gears. This is evident in 6th gear and hearing the engine noise change. However, high gear with that gearbox in my opinion is a better pick because it's difficult to stay in 6th gear. And as we know, maintaining 6th gear in SnowRunner doesn't last long. Upside number 3, tire options and clearances. Although the Zikz loses 4 inches on its tires when adding the mud tire option, it does have access to them. And its off-road option set allows for dualies, which not all 4x4s can have. Clearances, on the other hand, have blown my mind throughout the PTS server. I've briefly covered its collision model on prior videos, but in short, there is no hitbox for the vehicle's axles. In fact, the lowest point on the 566 Alpha is the steps on the side. With no hitbox to slow you down in thick mud, the Zikz definitely will perform well and get snagged up less frequent aside from hitting those stairs. Upside number 4, wheelbase. As stated on previous videos, especially on the STAP 3364 Crocodile video, the longer wheelbase 4x4s overall tend to drive better and not scoot around the road in a squirrely fashion, forcing driver inputs to constantly stay online, especially at speed. The 566 Alpha feels good to drive at fast paces if you can handle its steering speed. Upside number 5, stability. While I can't say it's impervious to tipping over, it does feel rather planted despite having weights in its cab. I can say however that I have driven this thing pretty hard and it's held on well despite being in some sketchy situations. But still, with the additions of add-ons, just be aware that they can affect your balance. And finally, closing out the upsides list at the number 6 spot, exceptional 4x4 performance. Subjectively, I believe this truck is one of the better off-road performers as far as 4x4s go. While I still believe the Crocodile does better with its ability, the Zikz takes the cake with power and saddle pulling. Essentially, we could have added versatility to this list of upsides from the plethora of jobs this thing can do, but I'm sure you figured that part out already. So in conclusion, the Zikz 566 Alpha rivals the STEP 3364 Crocodile in many ways and surpasses it in some as well. It's heavier, has more power, and comfortably uses more of its add-ons effectively. The Croc, in my humble opinion, outperforms it with balance slightly and through deep conditions as well. I believe that's due to weight characteristics, but mostly because of always-on differential locking. However, the Zikz 566 Alpha is the only 4x4 that I could confidently pull a low saddle with. Its power, special gearboxes, versatility with add-ons, and favorable hitbox collision models makes it the only 4x4 that can pull heavy loads with relative ease. In closing, Season 9 has brought 2 good additions to the game that I believe drivers can truly enjoy. While the Zikz 566 Alpha is small, its power rivals S-tier off-road trucks and surpasses most 4x4 off-road peers. In truth, I would still use it as a small support vehicle and light hauls as well due to the consumption under load, but hey, it's still fun to pull some cargo loads as well. Try this one out and let me know what you think. I hope this review gave you a fresh, new perspective of the Zikz 566 Alpha. Please smash that like button, share the video with someone who is currently struggling with the game, and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell so you don't miss any future content. Hope you all have a wonderful day, God bless, and stay upright.